Good morning, good afternoon and good evening from sunny Stockholm. Joining you here today from the Folke Bernadotte Academy studio is I, Pernilla Redén, Director of the Challenges Forum International Secretariat. During today's one-hour program, we will have the opportunity to learn much more regarding the new digital tool for consideration for senior mission leadership in UN field operations. You might ask yourself, what is the digital tool and how can it be used? To answer that question, we have a wide range of senior, current and former UN leaders joining us here today. However, before we take off on this exciting journey, we will start with watching a short introduction movie. As you can see from this video, there is a lot of collective experience that has gone into producing considerations. There is also a lot of concrete examples that is demonstrated in the digital tool. You might ask yourself, what is unique with the tool and how can I use it? To help us understand and to give us answers to these questions, we are going to hear from Jonas Alberoth, Principal Senior Advisor to the Challenges Forum International Secretariat. I'm therefore now handing over to our field reporter, Susanna Alfors.
Thank you, Pernilla. Jonas Alberoth, you have a very long history with the Challenges Forum and indeed with leadership issues. And there is a lot of literature on leadership, but very few handbooks for UN senior mission leaders. So what then makes this tool such a unique tool for leaders?
The very essence of the digital mission leadership tool is that it's centered on mission leaders sharing their experiences with other mission leaders, with colleagues already serving in field missions, with colleagues during training and their personal preparations, and with colleagues newly appointed as leaders. In short, the tool can be described as a peer-to-peer dialogue between mission leaders on the core issues of mission leadership. The tool is also candid. It doesn't refrain from addressing also the more difficult aspects of mission leadership. And in addition, it's important to highlight that the tool also targets leaders on other levels, not only the senior mission leadership level, and all those interested in learning more about mission leadership.
Wow, sounds like a very great tool to use. So, and we know it's based on the Challenges Forum publication called Considerations for Mission Leadership in UN Peace Operations. And this is indeed a very collective effort from the whole global partnership, first launched as a book in 2010 and revised in 2020. How can we see traces of this really collective effort in the tool, in the handbook?
Well, you're right, Sanna. We do hope that this will be a useful tool. The underlying consideration study and the digital tool, they are, as you say, co-developed by the Challenges Forum partnership, and they include the collective leadership competence of the partnership, consisting of more than 52 expert institutions in approximately 24 countries, including many of the most active contributors to both UN and regional peace operations. This approach ensures for high relevance, broad representation, and the inclusion of all key mission leadership perspectives. It is important to stress as well that experienced UN senior mission leaders and the UN Secretariat has been deeply involved in developing, shaping, and sharpening the content of the tool.
Great. So it's really landed well in the whole global organization. And if I was a UN senior mission leader out in the field operations, can you give some example of how this tool could be of actual relevance to me?
To start with, the digital tool is an excellent aid memoir for those serving in missions. It gives the mission leadership team the possibility to read up on specific issues, tasks and challenges. It also provides for different types of peace gaming discussions around the considerations that are the red thread through the study and the tool. Another advantage is that it facilitates for a structured and aligned approach to joint planning processes. To sum up, it reduces the potential of the negative impact of assuming rather than knowing.
Wow. However, we have had a very good handbook for 13 years that's been very relevant both out in the missions and during training. Why do we need a web app for this?
Well, to digitalize the considerations study and add a lot of new content and feature in the form of an app serves many purposes. It makes the content and the knowledge easily accessible on our smartphones, also for colleagues serving in field missions. It has given us the possibility to make the content come alive through recorded case studies by senior leaders. It also gives users the option to personalize the content by marking favorite passages, including references to applicable UN guidance. Finally, it enables updates of the tool and its content, and we hope that this will be a continued collective effort involving both partners and other stakeholders engaged in mission leadership issues. Thanks a lot, Susanna Amanpour, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jonas. And now we're going straight to log into the missionleadership.challengesforum.org. And over to you in the studio, Pernilla.
Thank you so much, Principal Senior Advisor Jonas Alberud, and also I also thank field reporter Susanna Alfors and photographer Benno Filiser. If I understood correctly, one of the main uniqueness of the challenges consideration tool, and the digital tool is that it works as an aid memoir, and that it builds on a large number of best practices and lessons learned. So, as our reporter said, when you have a chance, log into leadership.challengesforum.org to check it out. So after this rich historical overview, we are going to hear from UN Under Secretary General for Peace Operation, Jean-Pierre Lacroix. He is going to speak to us both on the importance of leadership in general, on consideration, and the digital tool in particular.
Dear Challenges Forum friends, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, warm greetings to all of you who have joined this launch event, and thank you for your interest in UN mission leadership issues. I am very grateful to the Challenges Forum partnership for creating a digital tool for UN mission leadership, which is based on the insightful and valuable consideration study. The launch of this tool comes at a time of unprecedented digital and technological development in the world and within the UN. It is a useful reminder of the value of technology in making knowledge and doctrine more accessible. I am convinced that the handbook will be a welcome and widely used addition to mission leadership training. It will also be of value to senior mission leaders themselves as they prepare for deployment, as well as throughout their assignment. This new digital tool builds upon the consideration study to convey its substance in an accessible way. It also contains a depth of useful experiences, insights, and best practices which will help guide mission senior leaders in navigating complex peace operations. As I have said before, when it comes to UN mission leadership, good is not good enough. We need exceptional leaders who, together and as part of an integrated and well-functioning mission leadership team, can meet the significant responsibilities entrusted to them. Leadership ability, both individually and as a team, is broadly recognized as one of the most critical factors determining the success or failure of a mission. Yet, our senior leaders are called upon to exercise their leadership in adverse and increasingly complex political and security contexts. Effective leadership requires an immense range of skills and qualities which, combined, are rarely found in one individual. It is the collective combination of complementary skills, qualities, and experience that determines the effectiveness of a mission leadership team. These also define its ability to address the myriad challenges of peacekeeping today. As members of mission leadership teams, senior leaders are obliged to seek mutual understanding, respect each other's professional competencies, and communicate openly to maximize the effectiveness of the team while always being informed and guided by the bigger political picture. At the same time, senior mission leaders must strive for a gender-responsive and inclusive leadership and set the example not only in terms of work but also personal conduct. They must embody the UN values of integrity, humility, and humanity, and be prepared to stand up for these values, as well as the organization's integrity and their mission's mandate. To lead effectively, senior mission leaders must also make time to understand the broader UN system in order to leverage the comparative advantages of different entities and manage crisis and transition. To lead is to serve. And in this context, the host state, its people, and the UN are best served when progress is that of the mission rather than that of individual leaders. Mission leaders are there to build peace, not a legacy. This is not an easy task. Becoming a mission leader requires rigorous preparation, particularly for senior mission leaders without previous UN field experience. And this digital handbook can be a very useful reference tool. The handbook intends to be intuitive and user-friendly with a strong pedagogical focus. It contains interactive online learning activities, including video and audio media. I trust that mission leaders, as well as practitioners and trainers, will find it a solid source of information to guide them through the complexity of our UN peacekeeping operations. I wish both current and future mission leaders the best of luck in their assignments. There are no shortcuts to successful mission leadership. International peace operations are complex, extremely dynamic, and highly demanding. This tool can help current and future mission leaders prepare themselves as much before their deployment. Once on the ground, it is key to lead with humility, courage, and determination, using the UN Charter and values as their compass. By doing so, they will strive at all times to create the best possible prerequisite for their colleagues, the mission, and its partners to perform and thus succeed. I would like to conclude by expressing my profound gratitude to our friends of the Challenges Forum for this opportunity to address you all, and I thank you.
There, I thank Under Secretary General Lacroix for speaking to us here today. From his message, I conclude that it has never ever before been harder to be a UN senior mission leader in this complex world that we live in today, and hence there is no shortcut to effective leadership. Having listened to this, you might ask yourself, what are the lessons learned and how can we make mission leadership more effective? To get a greater understanding and more in-depth knowledge and trying to answer this question, I have a very experienced panel with me here today, joining us from Kigali, Bamako, Addis Ababa and New York City. This panel is led by former UN Under Secretary General for Peacekeeping and the patron of Challenges Forum, Jean-Marie Guéhenno. Jean-Marie, I'm handing over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pernilla. I am very pleased and honored to moderate that panel because I believe that senior leadership is one of the most important factors in the success of a mission. Peacekeeping, there are many factors you don't control. The appointment of senior leaders, their preparation, you have some influence on it. And so discussing it is really very relevant for the success of missions. I would want to ask the senior leaders who are assembled here just a few questions because we don't have much time. And I will start with General Gordon. General, you have served in several peacekeeping operations, including some pretty difficult ones like Bosnia. And you were the force commander in a very sensitive one, Ethiopia, Eritrea. At the time, there were no tool like the considerations. And you have played actually an essential role in developing them. So my question is really, can you recall one particular instance where in hindsight, you wished you had such a tool? One difficult moment where they would have been particularly helpful?
Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Jean-Marie, thank you for your searching question. The glib and easy answer is the whole time I wished I'd had something like considerations, because we all have to throw our minds back to those early days when you were the Undersecretary General and I was one of your force commanders in the field. We were parachuted into these processes with very, very little preparation or training. In my case, none, apart from the professional expertise I could bring to what was a peace process based on experience in places like Northern Ireland. And I do know now that I would have been much better force commander if I'd had a better preparation and understanding of some of these dynamics. Because the truth is, and I'm sure it's been said earlier, that leadership, or whether it's civilian, political, humanitarian, or military leadership, or police leadership in the field, is very different in UN missions than it is in a national context. And making that adjustment from the national form of leadership, the national context, to this world where everything is uncertain, everything is chaotic, everything is ambiguous, everything is multinational, multilingual, multicultural, is a big step. And unless we prepare our people for that step, we will always be throwing them into this environment unprepared. And I can say from my own experience, I did feel unprepared. I did have to learn on the job. And if I'd had something like the considerations, I know I could have prepared myself. And that's what it's about. I could have prepared myself much better. Which is why, actually, ever since I was in that environment, I have been passionate about senior mission leadership training, while I was involved in the development of considerations, involved in the development of the Senior Mission Leadership Program, and considerations more generally, and the Capstone Doctrine, of course, which we helped develop with you, Jean-Marie, because those gave us a doctrinal foundation and preparation for those senior leaders when they faced this tough environment where you have no transactional authority. All your authority comes from being transformational, and that working with transformational teams and mission leadership teams is a skill set which you can only learn through practice, but you can prepare yourself for it. And something like considerations is gold dust to help people prepare for that difficult environment where nothing is certain.
Thank you very much, General, for what you said. It's good to see that over the last 20 years, I think a lot of progress has been made, and now senior leadership's come much better prepared. And we always rely on talent, your talent, the talent of your colleagues, but it's good to have also some preparation. Let me turn to Hester Paneras. As a women police commissioner in Sudan, a country which has been through several military coups and is now sadly again slipping into civil war. You had a double challenge to promote civilian rule in a country that has ignored it for many years, and to promote gender equality, including in a profession, police, that has been male-dominated. Can you give us some concrete examples of how you achieved, you met that challenge, how you did it?
Thank you very much, Jean-Marie, and thank you for this opportunity. Yes, I think one of the things that I must point out is that I was Deputy Police Commissioner before I went as Police Commissioner, and that was an advantage to learn to know the people before. But also, I've done the Senior Mission Leadership course before becoming Police Commissioner. And I think that what Robert said now, it gave me a basis to work from. Now, of course, one comes into the mission, yes, as a woman, but I think what I had to do, because there are two aspects. It's the one is how to make inroads with the Sudanese police, and on the other hand, also how to support them in getting gender mainstreaming into the Sudanese police itself, and in the broader rule of law aspects. When I was Deputy Police Commissioner, I started working with them, and I think one of the things was to have humility, not to move in and come with this boisterous posture and say, I am here to show you how, but rather to approach them in a way of, I'm here to help you, tell me what it is that you want. And to have some flexibility, recognizing their culture and showing respect for that, and also showing respect for their knowledge. Because it's not as if we were in a country where the people in the police knew nothing. Some of them were very educated with PhDs and qualifications in that sphere. We might not have agreed with maybe some of what we see within democratic approaches, but they had good knowledge. And to give them the ownership. So what I have found is that opened up their thinking, that made them accepting me, and we actually had very good relationships. When I went back as Police Commissioner, I found that a document that we started working on, a memorandum of understanding on how to collaborate, was still not signed since I left as Deputy Police Commissioner. And one of the first things was, in a week after I went back, I went to Khartoum to meet with the senior officials. And within 6 weeks, we've signed that document. So that shows to me that there was openness. And then just something short on how to bring the gender issue also into the reform processes and the capacity building that we had to do. We started out of the need within the mission itself to establish a female police network. Because of certain dynamics and challenges that the women in the police faced in the mission as well. We then reached out to the Sudanese police to start discussions. Now, what was very interesting is that there were questions initially, especially from the male-dominated senior management, on are we going to sort of influence their women to start resisting certain things and so on. We invited the men to the meeting where we were meeting with the women as well. And they could see what the type of discussions were and so forth. And they then saw the benefit in that and allowed us and approved that we continue to work with the women. After what we've done in Darfur and establishing even female networks within the Sudanese police, and also Men for Change, you won't believe how many of the men were actually supporting this process in the Sudanese police as well. We had even a request from Khartoum to come and support them, although it was not within the mandate of what UNIMED had to do, but they invited us to also come and assist them to get a women's network going in Khartoum. So I think, and that started opening up routes, and some females who were in administrative positions started moving into some of the operational side and had positions where they were part of decision making. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And I heard the two very important words in what you said. One was humility, which is so essential to connect with the people you are there to help. It's their life, it's not your future. And so that humility is really vital. And the other that I find really important is network, because we know that if you are isolated, you're not empowered. And there is an enormous power in connecting. I remember once I was giving a speech in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and there were women from all over the country. And suddenly they sensed that they were together. And that gave them much more confidence than they were if they were isolated in Bunia or Kisangani or one of the many cities of Congo. So networking, helping people get a sense of their collective power is actually really important. Let me turn to Mustafa Soumare. Your career has straddled peacekeeping and development, and you have worked in the field and you worked at headquarters. And we all know that sustainable peace needs good governance and development. And the concept of integrated missions was developed precisely for that, to respond to that need. But we all know that it's easier said than done, and that there is often a divide between the political perspective and the development perspective. Can you tell us about the situation in the field where that gap was in evidence and how you managed to overcome it?
Thank you very much, Jean-Marie. This is really, I agree with what Robert and Panera has said, that you can never be prepared. So it's really, when you go there, there are always situations in which you have to deal with that you have never seen before. So I've been in particular, for example, the example that I want to give, I have two examples, but I was hesitating, but I will give the example, for example, on South Sudan. There I was, at the same time, I was the deputy SRSG political, and I had the police under my purview as deputy SRSG political. In the resolution we had, it was very clear, because of what has happened in South Sudan, that we were not supposed to do any kind of capacity building except for human rights and so on. And imagine a police that cannot work with the national authorities and so on. It's just a police that cannot do anything. So how did we overcome? First, it was very important that within the leadership, we understood that. And really, there is a kind of common understanding that, yes, we have to do something about it. The way we did it was on two fronts. One is really to make sure that we have that time the deputy SRSG, RCHC, to really leverage on capacity building, harnessing really the power of the UN system which was there. But within the mission itself, what I have done as also deputy SRSG political is I came up with the concept that, you can bend the resolution, but you can't break it. So meaning really telling the police commissioner, what you are doing is similar to capacity building, but don't call it capacity building. It's really not that capacity building per se, but you have to do that to be able to have a good relation with stakeholders and things like that and so on. So that really was possible, one. because we have this strong solidarity within the mission team leadership. And second, also, it was very important for us, notwithstanding with the situation in the country, that we needed somehow to do something with regard to capacity building, but really in a way which is really not coming in contradiction with the mission. So that in innovation, sometimes also you need to think out of the box in the leadership to be able to really solve sometimes this kind of nexuses which are all and so on. There is another example in DRC, but maybe when I have time later on, I can come on that.
And you can talk about the example now. You can mention the example in DRC.
Okay. On the DRC, actually, it was I was there, the deputy, the resident coordinator, the humanitarian coordinator, and so on. And then everything was really very good until we have the establishment of the intervention brigade. So once the intervention brigade was there, clearly, first of all, the rest of the UN agencies say, we cannot really deal with the mission because you are part of the problem. On the other side, also sometimes even at the headquarters, some people coming, you are a humanitarian coordinator, we'll have to change that because, having the intervention brigade coming there and so on. So how did I do that? Again, this is where I say really the solidarity among the leadership is very important. In our meeting, I made it very clear people to understand this different perception depending where you are. If you talk about development or talk about humanitarian issues or on development, this thing of the intervention brigade where we are with the military going out there can create some problem. So then we really need to have a kind of principle clearly that we will support, for example, the humanitarian only when they need. This is where I use the concept, this is this French song, which is Je t'aime moi non plus. So we have to do that. We go with them when they need us. And clearly there are times when they need us and we can't force ourselves on that and so on. Second, this is where also we came up with how can we, in a way, really support development in the areas eventually where, for example, the intervention brigade is intervening and so on. So it's really a mix of, I would say, different initiatives that you need to pull together to make that happen. But clearly, again, as I say, if there is one thing for a leadership team to be effective at the field, solidarity is important, and also awareness that whatever the resolution says, we have to find a way to work with the national authority stakeholders is also important. Back to you. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And this last example that I think is very revealing, because we all know that at headquarters sometimes, because you are removed from the people you are meant to help when you are in tragic situation, you serve sometimes your bureaucracy more than you serve the people. But when you are close to them in the field, you know what your priority is. And so I think that there is a real specific responsibility for people in the field to work together, and that human relation, that connection to overcome the artificial divisions within the UN is really essential. So thank you for reminding us of that. Well, we already touched upon the Democratic Republic of Congo, so it's only natural that I turn to Leila Zerougi. The UN has been in Congo for more than 2 decades. And Leila, you were the leader of the mission, and you have had to manage the gap that inevitably opens between the expectations and what can actually be done with the limited means of the UN in a country as big as Western Europe. And I would want to ask you how you did it, and what is your advice to all the UN leaders who often find themselves in similar situations? Because I know many missions where one would look at the magnitude of the task and the actual resources of the UN, and there is a gap. And so there's a gap between expectations there's a gap also between expectations and capabilities. There's also a gap between what one would want to do and what one can do. So, Leila Zerougi, what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much, Jean-Marie. And I think this is a challenge for every leader in peacekeeping mission. Whatsoever be the situation, of course, in Congo, it was such a huge country, so very important. And I remember when I arrived for the first time, it was as GSRG first and then as SRG. It was, the expectation is very high. You have first to know what is real expectation that fit with your mandate, what is expectation that you cannot deliver on, to not waste your capacity, create even more expectation and you are not able to deliver on. So it's important to know what you can do, what is priority in the mandate, what you can do beyond what is in the mandate, and how you make sure it will be sustainable, and to make sure also that it is needed and nobody else than you can do. So it's very important to have this clarity from the beginning, because everyone will ask you to do things. So you have to identify what will make a difference on the ground. And I will give a few examples without going beyond, because what I did when I arrived the first time is to know, I asked OCHA to divide the conflict area in must, could, should protect, could protect, and to see where my troops are deployed. And I realized they are more in should, could than in must. So we decided to redeploy them where there is a need for them to be there, because the risk is in this area. That's the first thing, to then ensure that, because we were also mandated to protect civilians and to provide support to the government forces, so to ensure that what we are doing is sustainable by bringing the government on board and letting them ensuring what they have to do. And we are here in support, and as it was said, is also to not come, I am replacing you. I'm here to support you, but it's your responsibility. And that's very important. The second thing is to ensure that your team understand what you want, what the mission is about, what we can do, what we cannot. And that's another challenge. When I arrived, everyone was divided, the country team, the human rights, the political, and the military. So we decided to bring all these people together through the protection mechanism that we put in place. And these protection mechanism in the field, what we called at the time the senior management group in the field, in the mission, and then the protection working group and the senior management group on protection, to ensure that UNICEF, and I brought UNICEF, OCHA, and it was UNICEF, OCHA, and another, not a country team, but ICRC, to ensure that these people that are deployed on the ground can help us identify the threat, etc. And we built, and it was like something very new to bring these people in with human rights, and we embedded within our bases what we called the community liaison officer, who is Congolese, recruited by human rights or civil affairs, speak the local language, that will engage with the community. And we put in place also the community alert network that can engage with the community liaison officer to force our people to go when there is a threat. At the same time, you have to work with the government, as I mentioned, with the local authority, with the civil society, and of course the country team. And I think this creates a new way of delivering on a mandate that is complex, that we don't have the capacity to sustain the support if you don't create on the ground people that can do the work after you leave, because you cannot be there for a long time. You make sure that this will be sustainable. You keep the connection with the people, women, children when they are affected, community, and government. And I think the most important is to ensure that the government is on board. They don't become spoiler because they see you as doing things instead of them and gaining more support. So it's very dangerous. You have really to ensure that they are the one who will get the credit, even if they are not the one doing it, to then make sure that you will continue to deliver and you will have them on board. And that's what we try to do. The second thing is also at Kinshasa level. It's not just the field, it's at Kinshasa level to ensure that what is needed to be addressed at Kinshasa level, either by the government, either by ourselves, by our partner, by the Security Council. There is also this connection that allow to deliver on what we are doing with limited resources. Every year, you remember that we have cut in budget. We closed offices. When I returned in 2018, we closed 9 offices. And when we say office, it's 9 provinces. We end up only in 6 provinces deployed, and then in 4, and now in 3. But this was because we have this capacity to understand where the threat is, where we must stay, and where we can let the government take over. If I have time, I will add something important. If you tell me that I can.
Please.
It's sometimes you have to deliver on something that has nothing to do with your mandate, because if you don't do it, you will end up in trouble in delivering your mandate. And I will give one example. When Ebola started in Equateur, it was 100 kilometers from Mbandaka. We were not there. So staying without doing anything would bring Ebola to Kinshasa, and it would be a disaster. So I decided to take care of it. So I started by deploying a contingent there, the police, the human rights, and open a flight daily, Kinshasa and Mbandaka, and 2 helicopters in Mbandaka to take the doctor or whomever to the area where and this helped us to defeat and finish the epidemic in 3 months. We managed that. We even put some boots to not allow people to come from this area through the river to Kinshasa. And we managed to do it to help l'OMS to deliver, because at the time they don't have much capacity, and to Minister of Health to go every day to Mbandaka, the minister himself, and come in the afternoon to ensure that things are moving. And I asked my team from Goma to be deployed there, working with David Grizzly, focusing on this, while it was not our mandate. But it was necessary to ensure that Kinshasa is not in trouble, and we end up stopping to implement. So this is an example where sometimes you have to divert resources because it's necessary.
Thank you so much. There are so many issues that we want to discuss, and we still have a little time, but not too much time. So there are 2 questions that I would want to ask to General Gordon and to Esther Paneras, if we have time. One is question is very important to the challenge partners, is about troop contributors. We all know that some have national caveats, and so creating a sense of unity of purpose in a force for troops that haven't trained together before they were assembled by the UN. That's not an easy proposition. And so my question to you, General, is how do you create that sense of unity of purpose in the force? And what are your recommendations? What is the skill set needed to be a force commander that brings the force together?
Study the context. Actually, what we're all trying to talk about is the considerations a digital tool here and how helpful that would be to the context of peace operations and to senior leaders. Because the thing that cripples missions still is this issue of silos, of individual components in a mission all working on their own and not working across the boundaries and competencies as represented in the senior mission leadership team of a mission, which is why the considerations focus and all that goes with it is on the mission leadership team, that team that has to work together, that has to be a band of sisters and brothers trying to solve the problems which they've been faced with and addressed. And the challenges consideration study and its associated digital tool is focusing on that. And so my message to answer your question, Jean-Marie, to nascent future force commanders is understand the context, understand outside your immediate professional business of soldiering, understand the political context of what you're doing, the developmental and the humanitarian context of what you're doing, so you can work with your colleagues, support them, and they can support you. It's breaking those silos down, which is the most important thing to create a sense of unity, both within the mission and actually within, in my case, in Hester's case, I'm sure with the police, the military component. Military components work well when they all understand how they're supporting the political context. And that's what Considerations is trying to do with that focus on the teamwork that is represented by the mission leadership team.
Thank you very much. Now to Hester Paneras.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Good.
I think you don't succeed if you don't have the shared base of knowledge and of understanding.
Yeah. And we see silos, Jean-Marie, everywhere still sadly, in missions now.
Yeah. Now to Hester Paneras, when you have been in a mission where the UN and the African Union work together, and we see how important it is in Africa that the two organizations work together. But it's not so easy to make it work well. And so I'm sure you've drawn many lessons from that experience. And I think we're all interested, and maybe, in the future, there will be more situations where the UN and the African Union have to work together. So if there are any lessons you draw from that experience, can you share some of them with us? You are muted.
Thank you very much, yes. Yeah, I think lessons learned from there, but also in my current position at the United Nations Office to the African Union, where I'm basically responsible for especially on peace operations and African standby force and so forth, on the collaboration. I think one of the things is that how do we work as an equal partner while there is such a difference between the resources and the capacities available? Because if we look at what the UN has to do certain tasks, for instance, if we just look at DOS, the Department of Operational Support, and the resources that they have from a logistical perspective, and we look at in the African Union, where there are 3-4 people who have to do that same task, and we have to balance in that regard. So I think one is the understanding for the other one's situation, and not to without playing big brother, can I call it like that? But rather to accept that the African Union within its capacities be recognized as an equal partner. I think, and that was quite clear in Darfur as well, there was a joint office established, but at the end, and that was based in Addis Ababa, and what happened is because of the capacity deficit on the African Union side, at the end, the office was more UN with only one AU person. So I think that is important. If we look at how the partnership work now outside of UNAMID, that was a hybrid mission, and I still think it's a good model, although many people don't see it as such and want to move away from the hybrid model. Of course, it doesn't have to be exactly like in UNAMID, but there was a lessons learned exercise done on that as well. I just want to look on, for instance, if we look at the African Union mission in Sudan currently, the transition mission ATMIS before AMISOM, I think one of the lessons learned is the AU also making use, and without reinventing the wheel, using a lot of what the UN has in as far as policy is concerned, etc., to take it and adapt it to the African Union concepts and standards. I think that is a good lesson learned. Of course, one of the things is joint planning, especially if we look at what is currently happening with the possibility and the deeper discussion on the financing of African Union-led peace support operations. I think that will give us a bigger scope on where to collaborate, of course, depending on what the Secretary General report has as an outcome with the Security Council in this regard now, and how it went on. So I think that sharing of information and mutual respect and collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think sadly we have to wrap up now. I mean, there's so many issues that we will want to discuss, but maybe in the Q&A we can touch upon some of them. So I leave it to the organizers to challenge Forum.
Thanks a lot to our patron, Gehenno, and to the extinguished panelist. I believe that this has given us a lot of food for thought, and I have rather some questions to the panel myself, and I'm sure that goes for all of you as well. I will just share one or two reflections before we close today. What I hear the panel talk about was basically two sets of skills that is important for a senior mission leader. One of the skills refer to preparations, where we are focusing on learning the job, actually on the job, maybe having a more junior position before the senior position, the importance of training, proper training, and the importance of building the knowledge about where we are going and how we are going to do the job. And the second set of skills is around the context. A senior mission leader needs to have this in mind and approach the issue with humility and understand the context properly and develop networks to work together with others to really move forward with difficult issues. And I'm thinking here about issues such as multiculturalism, multilingualism, different religions and other different cultural specific issues. Working with others is very important, the panelists said, and they also said that it's important to show solidarity. And another important point that I bring with me from this session is that the leaders are here to serve the people, not the bureaucracy. There also need to be a balance between the capital and the periphery, or if we so say, between the capital and the provinces, while working as a senior mission leaders. These are some of the takeaways that I have gathered from this session. So before I close today's program, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank all the speakers, panelists, and also the guests that have participated in this hour. I will also take the opportunity to now thank UN Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of Mission for MONUSCO, Bintu Keita, former Deputy Special Representative to the Secretary General and Force Commander for UNMISS, Jasper Singh Lider, former Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General for UNMIL, Jordan Ryan, among many others, that have contributed to making the digital tool what it is today and what it is going to be tomorrow. So thank you very much. The valuable experience by these people and by the panelists have all largely contributed to the digital tool, and I really would like to thank you all for that. And we continue to work, and we continue to work forward to develop the tool further and have a much better tool in the future. Thank you all, and goodbye for now.